They're found in the SA node, which sits in the right atrium, kind of right near where, kind of medial, where the superior vena cava empties into the right atrium. There's a little specialized group of cells. You can't see it as anything different. It doesn't look different physically, but that's where these specialized cells are. And then there's another group of them that are down in the lower part, so the inferior part of the right atrium, kind of medially in the wall, and right where the ventricles would start. So right where the cuspid valve would be or whatever, there's a little patch of them there, again, medially as well. And that's called the AV node. Now, when the SA node fires, that is going to trigger a change in electrical activity of the heart. So we would see that event, right, as a change in electrical activity. And that would be a depolarization. And then there would be, nothing would happen. And then we would see another electrical event of a repolarization, which would occur later. Now, in response to being depolarized, muscles contract. Right? Just like skeletal muscles, when you depolarize a skeletal muscle cell membrane, what did it do? It contracted. If you depolarize cardiac muscle tissue, what's it going to do? It's going to contract. So this wave that we see here, now we have to use the language of electricity. This is a depolarization of the atrial myocardium. What did I just say? I just said that all of the cells of the atria generate an action potential. Now, remember cardiac muscle tissue when you looked at it in anatomy? Striated, right? But it had those things called intercalated discs. And that was one of the things we used. And those are just modified gap junctions. They hold the cells together, but more importantly, they have a little protein channel that unites the cytoplasm. So the cell membranes are literally touching. So what kind of synapse do you call it when the cell membranes, two excitable cell membranes, are physically held together? Is that a chemical synapse? That's an electrical synapse. And what do you know about the speed of transmission across an electrical synapse? Very quick, right? So this wave of depolarization here is because of all the electrical synapses, those intercalated discs of all of the cardiac muscle tissue in the atrium. All done? So that makes sense. So we see that as an electrical event. Then we know the muscle will contract in response to that, and then it will relax. Contract and relax in response to that stimulus. At some point, we want to tell the ventricles to contract, right? The ventricles don't want to receive the stimulus at the same time as the atria, because if the atria and the ventricles contract at the same time, blood's not going to move from the atria to the ventricles, it's going to go backwards, right? I mean, it can't go backwards because of the valves, but it would want to push back up into the atria. So we wouldn't have that event. These two events have to be separated. So the SA node provides the signal for the atria to contract, and the AV node, which is that specialized group of autorhythmic cells down in the inferior part of the right atrium, that provide the signal for the ventricles. Now, where is there more muscle tissue, atria or ventricles? Ventricles, so we would expect the electrical event to be a greater event because there's more cells. And furthermore, in the ventricles, and I think we might have mentioned this, but I really can't remember, there are modified muscle cells whose job it is to transmit electrical signals within the muscle tissue. There's this thing called the bundle of His, or the AV bundle, that is basically what looks like an axon, or a group of axons, but they're modified muscle cells, that goes down through the interventricular septum. It reaches the apex of the heart, and then comes up around the wall of the heart and ends in these things called Purkinje fibers. Did we talk about those? I think maybe. Okay. And the significance of that is rather than having to rely on the signal to be transmitted through electrical synapses, we deliver it simultaneously to multiple parts of the ventricles so that the ventricle contracts or responds to that more rapidly. So when we see the ventricle electrical event respond here, it's going to be a very quick response like this, okay? Because of that speed with which the signal is transmitted through the myocardium. Okay? So here, it just went from muscle cell to muscle cell, but still pretty quickly. Here, it goes from bundle branches, Purkinje fibers to all of the myocardium at the same time. Now, to give you an idea of how much time, the time difference, from here to here might be 150 milliseconds. From here to here might be about 60 to 70 milliseconds. So this event is a more rapid event than this one, even though there's more muscle that we have to depolarize. It happens quicker. And then what do the ventricles do in response to this electrical event of being depolarized? They contract. So these are autorhythmic cells that do this electrical activity here. These are contractile cells that are going to be depolarized or whatever to cause systole here. And then eventually we know the ventricles need to relax, and we see that actually, that repolarization as a separate event also. So hopefully what we've done here by comparing these is we've been able to coordinate the mechanical events of the cardiac cycle.